Now, it is 5:33 here on NewstalkDrive, and as you've been hearing throughout the programme, the Irish Times has received considerable criticism today after it published an article about the alt-right movement in the United States. The piece was by Irish-based American writer Nicholas Pell, and it included a glossary of terms used by the alt-right, which included the following. There was one about blue hair, which apparently is a term to describe an aggressive, unpleasant feminist with brightly coloured hair, usually depicted as being overweight. Another term used by the alt-right apparently is dindu or dindu nuffin, which apparently is used to describe a black man convicted of a crime, often one lionised by the press or portrayed as innocent. And dindu nuffin is in reference to an attempt to approximate the African-American vernacular English pronunciation of didn't do anything. So, as I said, it has created a lot of controversy today. Was the paper right to publish the article? To discuss this, we're joined on the line now by Dr. Lucy Michael, lecturer in sociology in the University of Ulster and author of iReports, which is iOnline Racist Incident Reporting System, and also Paddy Smith, duty editor of the Irish Times and member of the Press Council of Ireland, who joins us now in studio. Paddy, thanks a million for coming into us. I'm going to start with yourself. If you could dial back the clock 24 hours, would you?
I have no problem with the publication of this piece. It's part of our opinion and analysis page. It is there to reflect a diversity of views. It doesn't reflect the views of the paper. In fact, most of the people working for the paper would find the views proposed in the article pretty objectionable. But the function of our opinion analysis page is to stimulate debate and stimulate argument and to inform. And the alt-right movement in America is now a significant force in the American media scene, and it is perfectly appropriate that we should carry pieces explaining what it stands for.
And I think actually a lot of people would agree or be interested in finding out a little bit more about the alt-right and what it stands for, and indeed the type of terms that they use. But should it come from a source which quite clearly from the article itself is biased towards the alt-right, is a supporter of the alt-right? And just to give you a reason that I'm saying that, in his article, Nicholas Pell, he describes the alt-right term itself, and he says the alt-right are people who are young and energetic with an irreverent sense of humour. Anybody else he describes in the article who are maligned by the alt-right are unpleasant, overweight, aggressive. They're all negative terms. So clearly the author himself is biased towards the alt-right.
The author is writing an opinion piece. He's not writing a piece of traditional journalism. He doesn't have to adhere to the standards of a reporter and state equally the views of both sides. It is clearly an opinion piece, and as such, I have to say we would defend our right to publish it.
He doesn't have to adhere to standards, but the Irish Times holds itself to certain standards, and there is an expectation that the Irish Times, in any piece that it publishes, wouldn't be promoting racism, promoting hatred, giving a platform to people who are trying to do that. Do you not think you've done that today?
I'm absolutely clear that we're not promoting racism or hatred.
Have you given a platform to somebody who is?
We're giving a platform to somebody who certainly clearly supports right-wing views, and in doing so on an opinion page, we are contributing to a debate that is ongoing, which has been balanced many times by articles very clearly opposing that kind of view, and indeed editorials which reflect the policy of the paper, which make it clear that the alt-right is an obnoxious and unacceptable form of politics.
I think, Paddy, though, there's a difference between right-wing views and racism. I think we both agree with that.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that there is a line, obviously.
And is dindu nuffin not crossing the line?
I think
that term that I used there.
I think it's offensive, but I think that
it's not racist.
I think that's it's too simple in a way. Where we would draw the line is with comments that would incite hatred, incite racism in a way that is not legal, and I certainly don't think it crosses that line. I think it's arguably racist. But I think it's got to be seen in the context in which it appeared, and I would say that is a line that we haven't crossed, and there's a worrying aspect to this, and that is an intolerance by sections of the community to views that they disapprove of, and a desire to make sure they don't get expressed. Now, I have no sympathy whatsoever, no truck with the alt-right, but we live in a society in which views are expressed robustly and rightly so, and it is a function of a newspaper to give expression to the spread of views.
Yeah,
I
sure,
just make this point that you say that the Irish Times has an obligation not to carry racist material. I would agree with you. But we also have an obligation in the documents of our trust, which set the paper up, to allow the representation of minority views.
All right, I want to bring in Dr. Lucy Michael, who, as I said, is lecturer in sociology in the University of Ulster, and she's been listening in on the line. Lucy, what is your response to what Paddy Smith has had to say? It's the Irish Times' responsibility to bring these views to the people.
It is, and what I really see as the issue in this is that while Paddy rightly sets out that, of course, there are different expectations of articles in the opinion and analysis section, nonetheless, this is the Irish Times. People have great respect in Ireland and internationally for things that the Irish Times publish. And this is not an opinion piece, this is an exercise in misinformation. Paddy's quite reluctant there to name it as racism. When you ask them, is this not promoting racism or hatred? He said, well, it's right-wing views. And I'm really glad that you called him out and said there's a difference between racism and right-wing views. Because what this really is a movement which is about trying to get certain terms and discourses, certain words and phrases, like the ones that you mentioned, accepted and used in mainstream media. Irony is the very strongest tool in all of this movement. To even Richard Spencer at a talk recently, the audience nastily saluted him, and he said, "Oh, it was a spirit of irony, exuberance." Similarly, this glossary is presented in a sort of ironic tone, but it's almost exactly the same as the Breitbart primer on the alt-right that Milos Yiannopoulos published. There's very little difference between the two. I see this as being very poor research on the part of the opinions editorial desk of the Irish Times, to not realise that this is part of the movement to have these phrases accepted. And so it's not good enough to say this is about the expression of views. This is not about the expression of views. This is not everything you need to know about the alt-right or the far-right, if you prefer. This is about saying, here's a glossary to something you need to know about, with no counter within the article or even clarification by the Irish Times that there is no research in this or presentation of truth or evidence. The Irish Times may not have an obligation to agree with everything and is quite right to publish things that the journalists and editorial board and so on don't agree with. But they do have an obligation to present well-researched and evidenced and representative articles, and this is none of them.
Paddy, you've been used as a pawn by the alt-right movement to get their phrases into the mainstream lexicon.
I don't think that's true at all. I think if I believed that in any way that this would be a recruiting sergeant for the alt-right, I think I would have to take a different view. I think we have a situation where most of our readers are literate, are well able for an argument, can see through the arguments being made in this piece, and I think there is a danger in saying they must be protected from this sort of speech. I think that's very much from a different age in Ireland. I grew up as a young journalist at a time of Article Section 31 of the Broadcasting Act, when there was a great fear that if Sinn Féin managed to get its representatives heard, that readers and listeners would be succumb suddenly and easily to their propaganda. And we argued, and quite rightly, that we live in a much more mature democracy. Our ideas are much more robust. Our democracy is much more rooted. And what we're doing here is explaining to people what is out there in terms of views. We are not propagating those views, and we will certainly be countering the views in subsequent articles. There's already one up online, and probably another one appearing tomorrow, taking issue with not only with the article, but with the Irish Times for publishing it.
Lucy, is that not a point that Irish Times readers, and indeed most of the general public, don't need an explainer piece beside opinion pieces to tell them how to think about the piece that they're reading, whether they should think it's right or wrong? Are people not able to make up their own minds?
Of course they are, but I think it's, if you go back to what John McManus said in his explanation of why we published the article, the opinion analysis section is to inform readers about the issues of the day, offer insight. and give them something to think about as well as to stimulate debate. This primer on the glossary of the alt-right is an exercise in misinformation. It's feeding phrases into the language, which it's not about recruiting to the alt-right as Mr. Zed said. It is about having these phrases known and accepted and used, and that's shifting the debate. It's crucial to the what we now call post-truth. To be able to use these different phrases.
Has it not succeeded in creating debate? Is that not a good thing?
But so has Katie Hopkins' articles, which the United Nations have called pre-genocidal. So have our limit, which many people have been asking in the comments section, what is your limit? Our limit is, Barry Smith says, the incitement to hatred. But anybody involved in this area in journalism will know how little the Incitement to Hatred Act has been used in the last number of decades in Ireland. So that's a very safe limit to have.
No, it's a question for us of assessing what is an explicit incitement, and I'm not talking about a prosecutor coming in and telling us that something has breached the act. I'm talking about people using their judgment in that respect. So all I'm saying is that there is a limit. I don't believe that this article crossed that limit, and the reality is that we are contributing to a debate that I don't think is going to rebound to the benefit of the alt-right.
In terms of Nicholas Pell himself, Paddy, how much research do you do on the people who write for your papers, and also on the articles that they produce for the opinion pieces? Like, are you confident that, for example, even in terms of the glossary that he produced, that it's accurate?
I think it's quite accurate, and I think it's
quite accurate. Is quite accurate good enough?
No, I have no argument with what he has argued. I have no, and I know exactly what he's trying to do, and that Lucy's saying that he's trying to make certain forms of speech acceptable. I don't approve of that, but I'm saying that we have a sufficiently robust society, a sufficiently robust democracy, that we can live with that, and the right to offend is very much what the right to freedom of speech is about. Freedom of speech is no use to you unless it includes the right of people who you disagree with profoundly to express their views, and we will stand by that.
Lucy, is that not really what's at the basis of this, which is freedom of speech and bringing to the people one person's view on something that is going on, and that is going on in America and is going on online and worldwide on social media, the use of these terms and these viewpoints in Ireland indeed as well. Why ignore it? Why pretend that it's not happening? Or should we do that?
Well, Emer, I don't think that this is really a question of whether we allow free speech or not. You know, I've been working very closely with DNR Ireland, looking at where do we draw the line in terms of hate speech. You know, what do we try and call out, if you like. My worry is this. You know, when John McManus responded, he said, you know, the existence of the alt-right can't simply be ignored. I absolutely agree with that. It was a factor in the US election and is closely associated with figures in the incoming administration. We would argue, moreover, anybody who seriously opposes it should want the public to know what the alt-right really stands for. But this piece doesn't tell us what the alt-right stands for. It only gives us the phrases the alt-right use, and in their terms. So a useful glossary would be to present these phrases and really present what they are trying to promote and what ideologies they represent, but instead they present it in their terms. So I would be a blue-haired social justice warrior for sure. But I'm also a passionate advocate for free speech, and I have been since I was a law student. My own grandfather was a sub-editor on the Irish Times. I've grown up with a great passion for free speech, so I'm certainly not here to say we should shut this down. What I am here to say is we have to have a conversation about, you know, how easily we accept opinion pieces from people who are not well researched. You know, those figures in the incoming administration John McManus referred to include Steve Bannon of Breitbart, includes Jeff Sessions, who was turned down for Attorney General previously for being too racist, includes General Mike Flynn, who described Islam as a cancer that hides behind the notion of being a religion. You know, those people people are recognised by a neo-Nazi news site, the Daily Stormer, as the Daily Stormer Dream Team. So I think when we say, we want a primer to the alt-right, sure, but, how useful is this one it stimulated the debate, but if we're going to get distracted and say, well, you can't call a racist a racist, then, I think we're falling into a trap of really using their language and using their terms, rather than saying, this is outright a manifesto for a movement that is racist and bigoted, and we have to be very careful about how much exposure we give them.
Paddy?
I'm very concerned about this argument, because again I come back to this issue of the limits of free speech in a democratic society, and we have to reflect that as a newspaper. We have to respect the full range of views that are legitimate and that are expressed in society. Another case in point, for example, is whether or not newspapers should ban the representation of the Prophet Muhammad, particularly in cartoons. Now, I don't think that was a very good idea. I don't approve of the papers that did carry those deliberately offensive ads, but I would defend their right to do so.
Again, Paddy, you're going to the difference between what's offensive and what's racist.
No, I don't think we are. I think that
well, it depends whether or not you think
is racism a special category, unique category? What about sexism? What about homophobia? These are all categories which are, I absolutely deplore.
Would the Irish Times knowingly or willingly carry something that is homophobic?
I think that that it is possible that some of the stuff, and it has been the case, that some of the stuff carried by the paper, for example, during the marriage referendum, was characterised by the gay community as homophobic. Now, we don't like that material, but it was very much part of a debate about gay marriage, and it would be wrong to say de facto that such views should not be carried, and I'm worried about moving in that direction. I worry about us being too patronising to our readers and of not accepting that actually they can make these distinctions. We don't have to make them for them.
All right, Paddy Smith, duty editor of the Irish Times and member of the Press Council of Ireland, and also Dr. Lucy Michael, lecturer in sociology in the University of Ulster and author of iReports, which is an online racist incident reporting system. Thank you both very much for joining us.
Now, still to come on this evening's News Talk Drive, we're going to have Tom Dunn with the music at 6:30, Donald Fallon with the Hidden Hit.